I think we are live on YouTube now. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Yogananda Guru Series at Shoolini University. I have some beautiful students in front of me, but more importantly, I have Shariq Ashraf here. I'm a big fan of Shariq and the TGL company that Shariq started. We'll hear about his story, but a quick introduction to Shariq. Shariq went to Singapore for his undergrad and then studied at Oxford for his MBA. I understand you spent a couple of years there, or probably it's an 12-month course, if I'm not wrong,
Right.
at Oxford. Went to Australia. He's been a consultant with BCG. And by the way, I share genes with you, Shariq. I started my career with McKinsey, and I spent 8
Nice.
years before I also became an entrepreneur. So welcome to the Yogananda Guru Series. The whole idea behind the Yogananda Guru Series is to get exciting and interesting people in front of you so that hopefully all of you can get inspired and you can create similar journeys of your own. I think with that introduction, a quick introduction to Shoolini. We are today one of India's leading research-led universities. We are pioneers in bringing in research into private university education. But more importantly, we try to give success to every student that we touch. And the Yogananda Guru Series is one attempt on our part for that. And we welcome Shariq once again. Poonam is going to do the formal introduction to Shariq, and then we'll get into a guftagu and a wonderful discussion. So over to you, Poonam.
Thank you, Atul, and welcome, Shariq, and thank you for accepting our invitation. Actually, Atul, it was just coincidence that my daughter-in-law Sonal was talking about her friends, and she was talking about Shariq and his amazing journey. And then she was telling me about the exotic teas that TGIL makes. And she was saying, that he was a very, very bright student and was in the dean's list. So immediately my ears pricked up and I said, oh, wow, that sounds just the ideal person to come and speak to our students. So I reached out to Shariq and he very graciously accepted our invitation. So thank you, Shariq, for being here, and really, really looking forward to hearing your journey from being in Boston Consultants and then, starting your own company. So just over to you for the rest of the story.
I think before Shariq starts, I'd like to introduce the TGL company to all of you if you haven't heard about it. They're pioneers in a way. They're pioneers in making instant tea mixes. They brought in exotic teas and coffees to the consumers. I think a bunch of very exciting stuff happening in beverages. I think, actually, Shariq, I was in a similar discussion with the founders of Sleepy Owl last week. So
Nice. Okay.
You guys are doing some amazing stuff. You're changing the world drinks tea, the world drinks coffee, and you've been so successful. So I think with that introduction, we'd love to hear a little bit about you. Let's tell us about yourself, how you grew up, your professional life, going to Oxford, and what made you leave all of that to become an entrepreneur.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for having me here. I think it's a big honor to be a part of this series. I'll quickly just run through my background. So I'm a Bombay kid. I was raised here, studied here until my 12th. For my undergraduate, I left and I went to Singapore, did my bachelor's in business with double honors in marketing and finance from the Singapore Management University. Then I stayed back in Singapore. I worked primarily in supply chain. I did the supply chain optimization strategies for brands like Diageo, for brands like L'Oreal, Ferrero. So these were brands that each had a unique supply chain issue that had to be solved. And so for a couple of years, we worked on that. After that, I left for my MBA to Oxford. Did that, got placed at the Boston Consulting Group based in their Melbourne office. Jumped at the opportunity, took that up, went there, was there for about 2 years, worked. So the great thing about consulting was, the hours were obviously, you're ex-McKinsey, so the hours are obviously very, very, very tough. You're in the office at 8:30, you leave the office if you're lucky by midnight, if not by 2 or 3 in the morning. You get by on very little sleep. But it exposes you to so many industries, right? Because you do one 4-month project with a construction company doing portfolio optimization. Then you might jump on a 3-month project with one of the world's largest banks, helping them expand their reach across the globe. Then you might do a food and beverage play So in a very short span, you're exposed to a lot of industries, and there's a tremendous amount of learning that happens because your peers are incredibly bright. Your partners who you're working with are been through the ladder, and they know so much that it's just something that I think I would be happy to pay to learn. So it was great to be paid to learn instead. So that was a phenomenal journey. But then, the entrepreneur bug sort of bit. I mean, family has a long lineage of entrepreneurship and setting up businesses. So there I was sort of very comfortable in Australia, comfortable with consulting, comfortable with the kind of life I was living, but wanted to do something more, wanted to explore more opportunities for doing something of my own. So I took a sabbatical from BCG. I took a year off. I just sort of went around the world traveling. I wanted to visit all 7 continents, so I sort of did that in this year. But it wasn't just random traveling, right? It was traveling with a purpose. I was seeing what's happening in which country, what's working where, what isn't working where. And I was halfway through my trip. I was in Argentina, on my way to Antarctica from the southernmost tip, Ushuaia, where I came across this brand called Tealosophy. Now, Tealosophy, like philosophy, but with tea. It just was a small boutique in Buenos Aires, and the smell was just coming out of it. It was delicious. So I walked in and I saw that they had some phenomenal teas on display there, right? These were full teas mixed with fruits, with flowers, with various herbs, with spices. And I was quite taken aback. And this is something I had seen throughout my travels. I mean, living in Singapore, there was a brand called TWG, one of the world's largest specialty tea brands that did very well there. Living in UK, as you can imagine, tea is the life and soul of the British uh, food scene, I would say. So I was quite exposed to it there. Australia, on the other hand, has a strong craft coffee culture, right? Coffee has to be fresh, coffee has to be beans, roasted, ground. It's all espressos and macchiatos. No one really has instant coffee there. So again, that was different. And throughout all of this, I was constantly thinking, why not India? I mean, in India, masala tea was prevalent, right? We grew up seeing our parents drink it, grew up drinking it ourselves. And coffee either meant filter coffee or coffee meant, your Nescafe and Davidoff, which surprisingly very few people around the world drink. It's not really considered coffee anywhere else. So so there I was in Argentina, and at this tea boutique, and I thought this is interesting. I want to meet the owner. So I asked the sales staff there if I could meet the owner in my very broken Spanish. But they were very obliging, and they set a meeting up for the next day. And I went for this meeting thinking, I'm going to meet the owner of a small boutique tea shop, so no big deal. As it turned out, Tealosophy is one of the largest premium tea brands in South America. The founder and owner, Ines Burton, she has been on the cover of the Fortune magazine, on the cover of the Forbes magazine for leading women entrepreneurs in Latin America. So I actually walked in quite unprepared. We met at the best five-star hotel in Buenos Aires, and the entire tea lounge was done by Tealosophy. So it was quite a shock, but also quite an eye opener. And we got talking about bringing Tealosophy back to India, right? Where I was sort of looking at a master franchisee concept, the way McDonald's works, the way Burger King works, or Domino's work, where you take a franchisee of a brand and you bring it to a country, and then you expand using that model. Stayed back there for a month. We crunched the numbers. We went through the supply chain because these two things were my forte and my strength. And we decided that we should not do this, right? And I think when any of you take this journey into entrepreneurship, it's very critical to be able to take a non-emotional call, to be able to take a fundamental call basis your analysis on whether you should proceed with a business or not. So as much as my heart wanted to do it, the numbers didn't add up. And there were two reasons why the numbers didn't add up. The first was that she was sourcing teas from where tea grows best, right? And tea grows best in India. It grows best in Japan, China, Taiwan. So Asia predominantly, and Sri Lanka. And she was flying the tea leaves from here to Latin America, Argentina mostly, blending them there with fruits and flowers. And then for me to fly them again back to India was a round the world trip, which would be very expensive. The supply chain would be very complex and the value added costs would be too much. And the other reason was we felt that the market wasn't ready yet. So we sort of left the venture there. It was a bit disappointing, but it's a call, it's a tough call that one needs to make in entrepreneurship. And I sort of went back to the consulting life. I did a stint in India. I took a transfer with BCG India to see how India would be because I had been away from India for 10 years now. So, a lot had changed. And I liked where the country had gone to, where the country was progressing, the trajectory it was going on, the economy that it was growing, and being back with family was, of course, was great. So decided to stay back. But again, the feeling of entrepreneurship was very strong. And as luck would have it, I quit BCG and I decided to start, dipping my toes into this and seeing what we could do. And BCG does these has these phenomenal alumni meets twice a year. So I went to my first alumni meet. Randomly, you're supposed to stand up and give an introduction about yourself. Why you quit BCG, what do you plan to do? And there were two people in that room who got up and gave the same introduction, who said, I quit BCG because I want to do something in the tea and coffee space in India. So I was quite taken aback. The other guy was Bhuman Dani. He was from BCG London, ex-INSEAD, MBA from INSEAD, studied in Dubai before that at BITS Pilani, Dubai as an engineer. I just said, sounds great. There's someone else who wants to do the same thing. So we got talking and we studied the data that BCG had, and we saw that there was a different supply chain model that we could make work. Instead of trying to do a franchisee model, what if we created our own brand? It would be more capital intensive. It would require more resources, but it would give us a greater control and ownership over the product, over the placing, the pricing, the blending. So we said, you know what, it's a bigger risk, but if we feel strongly about it, that's the right way to go about it. So in Feb 2016, as we started TGL, the Good Life Company, and we started with only teas because our focus initially was teas. I think it's important when you start something new to keep your focus narrow. Instead of trying to do everything, which is very tempting, it takes away too much bandwidth. It dilutes your core proposition, your core offering. So when you launch, you should have a very streamlined, very narrow focus on what you want to launch. The positioning has to be very clear. And I think there are three questions, right, that you need to answer before you launch something new. And each of these questions has multiple sub-levels, and I won't go too much in the details.
No, I'm going to interrupt over here for a
Sure.
second, Shariq, because
Please.
I would like to. I was taking notes like a diligent student because it was so amazing what you said. So I wanted to just summarize it for all the wonderful audience that we have right now, so that they can learn from your experiences. And then I think let's get deeper into how you went about building the business. And I think
Sure.
all our students would love to hear that. Would love to also understand the journey that you had. How do you go about raising money? What's the process of doing that? There's so many bright students here who want to be entrepreneurs. But what I learned was 4 5 things. I think what you said. I think the first thing you said was, if you really want to learn and you work for a great company, you will have to sweat it out, which means you'll be working 15, 18 hours a day. It's not going to be a 5 to 5 job, or sorry, a 10 to 5 job. That's not what it's going to be. And I remember my days at McKinsey, students, I would be working till 2 o'clock at night and then start again at 8 o'clock. And I did that for months together. You can argue whether that's good or bad. I think this question came up yesterday. What about personal life? So yes, personal life does take a hit a bit, but then you also have fun along the way. You take vacations. So I think that's the first thing I learned from you. I think the second thing you spoke about was experimenting, taking risk. So you were doing very well at BCG. You then decided that I'll take a sabbatical. You'll take an year off and you'll experiment. So experimenting with your life, taking that risk is the second thing I learned, which is very important for everyone. Which I think many of us have done, but you've done it so well. I think at a young age, doing that is not easy. I heard that. I think the third thing I heard was focus. So as you start your own business or you focus on building your career, then finding that one thing that excites you, finding that one thing that you'll build is very, very important, that you're known for. So what is that going to be? So that's the third thing which I learned. And I think the fourth thing I learned was network. So you got into the BCG alumni dinner, and you met a few people over there, and you networked with each other to start this wonderful company. So these were four things which I think were so relevant, because you started by hard work and diligence. You then said, you need to take risk along with that. You need to network so that you've got friends who are aligned with your vision to start something new. And the last thing was around just making sure that you pursue your passion. So I think I'm sorry I interrupted, and I just wanted to sort of put some sort of structure to your discussion. Before you get into TGL, I want to know a little more about you, Shariq, as a person, right? I mean, what do you love to do? What are your hobbies? Are you like someone from Mars who just comes and starts a new company, or are you an ordinary person like us?
Very, very ordinary person. And I think that's important, right? You have to be ordinary, because how do you connect with people? How do you decide what's going to work and what's not going to work unless you are part of the masses, right? If you came in from Mars, you'd probably end up selling something that's not going to work on Earth. So I think that's very important. But at the same time, I think the structure you put around everything I said is so great, because it helps me also see things from a different perspective. The few points that you brought out are critically important, and networking is one of those points that I just can't emphasize enough. And I know it's a challenge now, given the whole COVID scenario. People are working from home, people are studying from home, but it's also a great opportunity, because we had it easy, right? Networking for us when we were in our MBA or when we were working meant seeing each other, hanging out with each other all day long, and networking is easier that way. But then what that also meant was, now we are struggling because we weren't used to this way of working, of working remotely, collaborating remotely, picking up tools like Slack and Trello. It's been a challenge for us. But for all of you guys who are doing your course right now, I think it's a phenomenal opportunity, because you are learn, to collaborate, to get to know people via this medium, which I believe is going to become more and more important as time passes, because there has been a fundamental shift in the way the world works now. A lot of companies have realized that they don't need to spend on real estate. A lot of people have realized they don't need to waste time on commute. And I believe working from home will become increasingly important even after the pandemic goes away and vaccines are in place. So I think all of you students are being exposed to a phenomenal opportunity here, provided you push yourself, you capitalize on it, right? You make use of all the tools available for you to network. You make sure you create groups within yourselves. You make sure you hang out and learn from each other in the MBA, because half the learning of an MBA comes from your peers, and I think that's very important. So yeah, that's sorry, just to elaborate on that one point. Otherwise, as for me, I've always been a bit of a risk taker. I think my first entrepreneurship venture was when I was 8 years old. I think I was in Hasanat, studying under Manishanti, Sonal's mother. And so originally I'm from Bihar. My family is from Bihar, right? And we would go to Bihar every summer. And they used to have these toys in Bihar. I remember it's like there are two dolls with an almost invisible string tied on it and two pieces of clay on either sides. And you stick a piece of clay on a wall and you stick the other piece of clay on your fingernail. And it looks like the dolls are floating in air because you can't see the string. It's like a thin, transparent wire. And when you move your finger, the dolls dance and you can make them do different things, go apart, come together, do different kinds of dances. So it looks like they're doing this in air. It's like a magic show. And this used to sell in Bihar for some ridiculously cheap amount, but this was not there in Bombay. And as a kid, I just loved it. And I took my pocket money and I bought like 50 of these and I, packed them and I brought them to Bombay with the intention of selling it here at a massive markup. Um, that didn't work out too well because in the travel, the threads got all entangled and there was just no way to unentangle them again. And then I had to cut the threads and I tried just selling the dolls by themselves, which wasn't very great. So that was my first entrepreneurship venture and my first failure. There have been many more failures since then, and you learn something from each of them. So I think it's just been trial and error and risk appetite, right? But I think it's important to get out of your comfort zone and to try new things. Taking a year off from BCG, people told me I was crazy, I was silly. My mentor told me my mentor at BCG told me that I was just coming up for a promotion and this was a career suicide for me to be taking. And I could visit all the 7 continents when I was 70 years old. What's the rush? But you need to believe in yourself. You need to believe that there's something beyond this. You need to be happy at what you do, and there's a path for getting there. So always try and start with the end in mind. Visualize where you want to end up, and then sort of structure your journey towards that end. How you see that planning, and believe in yourself. Don't listen to what people have to say. I mean, take advice by all means. Take advice, but if it means going against who you believe you are, if it means going against what you believe your journey should be, then have the faith in yourself to follow your heart and to follow where that takes you. And the road's going to be rough, right? There's going to be a lot of failures. I mean, if I count my failures now, it's going to take all day. So I'd rather focus on the good side. So that's sort
Come
of
to, come to failures, Shariq. We'll talk about that. Let's talk about the positive things first, right? Let's look
sure.
at the journey that you took. So, what I heard you say is that here you decided to go about starting a new company. You focused on tea, beverages, because that's something that excited you. You
Right.
found a white space, or you found an issue or a challenge right now with the industry, and you said, hey, why don't I create a company that's very similar to what you've seen in different parts of the world, which you don't have in
Mhm.
India? And you went
Right.
out and did that very beautifully. So, if I've got this idea, I'm a student and I've got this great idea, what do I do? What's the process from getting the idea and starting the company and making it successful? We'd love to hear that journey, a little bit technical.
Sure. So I'll break that up into two parts, if that's okay. The first is about what it is that you want to do itself, and how you should think about that, or at least how I believe you should think about it. And the other is the journey itself, which will cover stuff like how you get the money for it, how you do fundraising, that aspect of it. So, and I'm sure both of these are already covered in a more academic way, but I'll just tell you how I went about it. There are three questions that are very critical for you to answer before you enter this journey, right? Three very basic questions. It's the what, how, and why. And each of these have sub levels, and I'll just briefly touch on them. So before you do this, right, the first question has to be what it is that you want to do. What is the product that you want to launch? And you can go into the nuances of the product as deep as you go, the better it is. Try not to make it superficial. Try to in your mind visualize what is the exact final details of the product, the final attributes of the product that you want to see out there. What covers product, what covers packaging, right? How will it be packaged? How do you see it? And that comes from the core, which is what is the brand identity that you want to create? What is the space that you want to play in? And there are many technical aspects when you think about packaging that will depend on how do you plan to launch it? Is it going to be primarily sold online? In which case you need to look at metrics such as online distribution players like FedEx, Blue Dart. They have a certain specification for size and the rate slabs on shipping. You need to make sure your packaging conforms to the lowest rate slab so you can be cost efficient. If it's going to be retail, there are shelves in retail and shelves have specific spacing. So you need to make sure that your box fits in that space. So that's packaging. And then, of course, the price. What are you going to price your product at? So these are the three what's. And like I said, each of these P's, the product, the packaging, and the price, have multiple levels of depth you can go into. For example, very superficially touching on pricing, right? You can do pricing bottom to up, which is what are my costs, right? You factor in the cost of your goods, you factor in your overheads, your warehouse, your distribution. It comes to 100 rupees. What is my margin I want? I want a markup of 30%. So my pricing will be 130. Standard bottom up pricing. There's top down pricing. What is the value of this product to consumers? And that is difficult to perceive because you have to do a elasticity curve, right? Demand supply. And what are people willing to pay for it? and then try and say, okay, I'm going to price it at that. And then work your way top down. If my price has to be 100 rupees, what do my costs need to be for my margin to be this much? And then the third is a parallel pricing. Does this product exist? What are competitors pricing it around? Do I want to do a premium play like Apple does a premium play, right? Do I want to do a value play like OnePlus does a value play? And then decide your pricing. In reality, you're probably going to have to use all three and sort of triangulate until you find that sweet spot. So that's just like a quick overview, and it's like a rabbit's hole. You just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into these three questions. What product, what packaging, what pricing. Then comes how, and how has two more P's again in my mind. One is penetration and one is promotion. How are you going to penetrate the market? What is your distribution strategy? Are you going to be a D2C brand, a direct to consumer brand? Are you going to use distributors instead? Are you going to be offline? Are you going to be online? Are you going to be available only in, select metro cities? Are you instead going to go to villages? Are you going to go international, focus only in India? All of these is market penetration, right? And then the promotion. What are your promotion strategies? What is your advertising strategy? Are you going to be a discount brand? Are you going to do normal advertising? Are you going to use influencers? Are you going to use social media? What's your promotion strategy? Um, and all of these five P's, right, that cover what and how, are driven from your core brand. What is it that your brand stands for? And that, I think, drives from the third question. We've covered the what, we've covered the how. The third question, and I think the most important question, is why. Why, why do you want to launch this product in this market? All right, that's just one question. Why do you want to launch this product in this market? But that has three questions within it, depending on what you emphasize. First, why do you want to launch this product? Emphasize this product. What makes this product unique? Why will people pay for this product? Why will they buy this product and nothing else? Why will this product sell? What is the need for it? The second emphasis is, why do you want to sell this product in this market? If you've selected only, say, Delhi, for example, why Delhi? If you've selected metro cities, then why metro cities? If you've selected villages, then why villages, right? This market has to be very well defined for you. Market could be geographic, market could be demographic. Your market could be defined as product for 15 to 30-year-old male executives, hypothetically, right? So demographic, geographic, however you slice and dice, but why? And the most important is, why you? What gives you a unique edge over someone else? What if someone else came in a day later after you launched the product and did the same thing? Why will you succeed where they won't? So I think this, if you can answer and then build on the remaining what and how, that forms, in my mind at least, a very good framework for you to evaluate what you should be doing and why you should be doing it and how you should be doing it. And then this flows into then raising capital for your venture, right? Are you going to bootstrap the venture, which is put in your own funding initially? Do you want to raise money from angels, VCs? I don't know how much detail you want me to get into funding, but I can give a quick brief overview if that would be okay.
Oh, that'll be wonderful. Let's do that.
Sure.
Shariq.
So with TGL, right? The way we went about with TGL was we bootstrapped it, which is we put in our own funds, Bhuman and I, initially. And we could not have. We could have gone to a lot of angels. We could have gone to a lot of VCs who put in money even before you launch, right? They're called pre-seed funders. And all you have to give them is a concept, an idea, and they will then back you with money. So it depends on what route you choose. There are pros and cons, obviously. The pros of bootstrapping, putting in your own money, is you don't give up equity of your company too soon. You don't give up shares of your company too soon. You have more control over the company. But the cons of it is, of course, you need to put your money up front, which means your savings are at risk, which is always a tough choice to make, but then it's an entrepreneur's choice to make, right? So that's the first stage where you have to go. And these are the questions that you need to answer if you go to an angel. Angels are usually individuals It could be friends, it could be family, it could be professional angel networks, and there are many out there. Or it could be pre-seed VCs. And again, there are many out there. If you Google, you'll find a list of pre-seed VCs who do these angel investments pre-seed. The next thing you can do is get your product up and rolling. So if you did bootstrapping, for example, which is what we did, you get to a certain scale, a certain size, and then you can start pitching aggressively to venture capital funds who will do a pre-series A or a series A, depending on what scale of revenue that you have reached. The whole concept is the venture capital game is a very different game from a traditional business game, right? And I've been part of both, so I very clearly see the difference. A traditional business game is you try to build a business focusing on profitability. So your first year might not be profitable, but you try and make sure your second year is profitable, third year is profitable, right? You try to get to profitability as soon as possible, and growth is linear. You will grow at 30%, 20% year on year on year, and you build a business. It takes, you can have a long-term vision. It might take 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, but you work through it and you build a business. That's a traditional view of a business. That's how my father built his business, and never took external money. So, so that's a more historical approach to entrepreneurship. In the past 20, 30 years, VCs have challenged this concept. Neither is right, neither is wrong. Both fail, both succeed. The venture capital way, in my opinion, at least, of looking at growth is you focus on exponential growth. 20, 30% is not going to cut it. You look at 300% growth year on year. And that means you're going to have huge expenses. Your marketing budget will be 4 times, 5 times your annual revenue. Your cash burn will be through the roof. You're not going to make money anytime in the 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. So that's why you go to a venture capital. You go to them and you say, hey, look, I have a great product or a great software or a great service. We can scale up rapidly, but money will come in much, much later, right? I mean, money will come in 5, 7, 8 years later. Like Amazon. Amazon didn't make money for, I don't know, the first decade or more of its existence. It spent everything it made on growth, aggressive growth. Facebook was loss making for God knows how long. WhatsApp didn't make any money until it was acquired. They had no commercial model. Their entire model was just user acquisition. And that's how a VC perceives it. You grow at 300, 400, 500% year on year. As a VC, I will pump in the money for you to grow at that speed, scale up very rapidly. And once you have scale, once you have a networking effect, once you have users logged in, then we can talk about profitability through various means. So these are two distinct models, and you need to decide what works better for your idea, for you as an individual, and pursue that model. With TGL, we sort of went the midway route. We weren't very comfortable going the whole VC route, but we weren't very comfortable taking a decade to grow the company. So we went with a strategic investor route. This is the route that companies like Beardo have done. If you've read about Beardo in the recent news, Marico, they tied up with Marico, and they recently completed their sale for some, I think, total value about 350 crores. So the strategic investor route is in between the two routes. The strategic investor says, don't do a crazy 300% growth, but not a 30% growth either. We'll try and double our revenues each year, but with a focus on profitability. So the exposure to debt is limited. The dilution of the company by raising external money is limited. And a strategic comes in and gives you access to a lot of their network. So we tied up, the first round of money we raised was through this Bollywood actress called Aisha Takia and her husband Farhan Azmi. This was in 2017. It was a structured deal where there were part funding that would come in and part would be sweat equity. Sweat equity is when a celebrity promotes your brand, and instead of you paying them for promoting your brand, you give them shares of your company. This is the model used by brands like Raw Pressery. They give sweat equity to Jacqueline Fernandez. Brands like Epigamia, they've given sweat equity out to players, and various. I mean, there are many brands. In fact, even Beardo gives sweat equity to Sunil Shetty for being the brand ambassador. So it's a win-win scenario, right? A celebrity gets equity in a company. You can afford to get a brand ambassador without having to give money, because money is very tight when you're starting out, right? So it's a win-win scenario. So we did that deal with them. The total deal value was about $1 million, about 6.75 crores back then, and it was split into these two proportions. This helped us grow. Farhan Azmi owns a bunch of restaurants across India. He owns Koila, he owns Basilico, and Chai Coffee, and a few others. So it helped us grow through this whole restaurant medium. We tied up with various hotels through him, various restaurants, various cafes, and that sort of helped us catapult our sales. Going forward again, when the next round of funding was due, instead of again going to a VC, we pitched to the Wadia Group. The Wadia Group owned companies like Britannia, which is one of India's largest food companies. They own companies like GoAir and Bombay Dyeing. So they have a huge distribution network, and they're experts in the food and beverage category, which made a lot of strategic sense for us to do. So then the next round of funding came through Neswadia and his family office, and he helped us get in touch with Britannia. Britannia helped us get in touch with distributors across the country, retailers across the country, significantly growing our presence to multiple cities, to multiple economies. So we went the whole strategic route where there was a strategic investor who gave in money and who gave us help with growing the brand, and that's sort of the route that we have taken with a staged fundraising plan set in place for the next 4 years. So this helps take the load off of running to a VC every year, every 18 months, and trying to get funding. That is secured. And then as entrepreneurs, it leaves us free to focus on the product, focus on the brand, focus on growth. So this is sort of a hybrid approach that a lot of startups do as well. So that's sort of the way you can look at funding and approach funding. And that's how we went about it.
Fantastic. I think that's so exciting. Tell us a little bit about how large are you today? And you spoke about funding. In which round are you as far as funding goes, Shariq? And
Sure.
are you ready to retire? I mean, have you made enough money?
Well, even if I had made enough money, which I have not, I don't think retirement is on the cards anytime soon, right? Entrepreneurship has never been on the cards for retirement. It's never been key. Oh, I want to do something for 5 years and then sit back on a beach, sipping some beverage or the other, and retire. It's something both Bhuvan and I really enjoy. So yes, we will be exiting from TGL in the future. That's how the deal is structured. And if things go well, then okay, we might make some money from it as well. But the whole plan is then to take that fund and then redeploy it towards creating another brand, growing something else. There's a wealth of experience that we've gotten. Uh, and at the same time, look at probably doing some investments in other startups, help other entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs grow as well, be part of the whole ecosystem. That I think would be the ideal way forward, because it's an ecosystem we love, right? And a lot of people supported us when we started out. It would be a privilege for us to turn around and be able to do the same with other budding entrepreneurs in the future as well. So I think
Let me
that's
ask
probably on the cards.
a question over here, a couple of them.
Sure.
Shariq, how old are you? And are you married with children?
Older than I would like to be. I'm 36 actually. I wish I'd done entrepreneurship earlier in life, but yes, I'm married. I have a daughter now. So it was I was actually already married before I jumped into entrepreneurship, and that made it a bit harder. Having a family to support and leaving a job like BCG is a tougher call to make than it is if you're single. But like I said, if you have the belief in the faith and some savings, it helps.
So we've got lots of young students here today. All of them are budding MBAs or the others. By the way, you've got a compliment. Himang says you look much younger than 36. So
Thank you.
congratulations.
It's
So
just a Zoom
what's the
effect.
right time to be an entrepreneur? Is it immediately after doing your MBA? You're like 25, 24, 26. Is it 32, which I guess when you started, or is it like when I did it, possibly at 45? So, what do you think is the right age?
I generally don't think there is a right age. I do, however, think there is something to be said for getting some experience, work experience before doing entrepreneurship. And I know there are many examples that go against this period. I mean, like Mark Zuckerberg, zero experience, and look where he is today. So there is no right or wrong answer for sure. But in my personal experience, if you step out into the working field and spend at least 2 years working, it helps you get structured with your thought process. It helps you understand how companies work, and it's if you do it for too long, it can be a burden because then it forces you to be in that mind space. But I think 2 3 years of work experience probably helps you get set up the right way. It also helps you network, right? I mean, you meet a lot of people when you work, and you never know which of those contacts might come in handy.
You know
Uh,
what? I'm going to pause here for a second and let's try to get the audience in. We've got a bunch of students right now over here on Zoom. Let's ask them, how many of you want to be entrepreneurs? Whoever wants to be an entrepreneur, just write me and put it on the chat bot. Let's see how many me's come in. So, okay, we've already got, oh, wow, lots of them.
Lots.
Fantastic.
wow, that's incredible.
Right? Are you seeing that? So you've inspired quite a few people, Shariq. That's exciting.
I'm
So
glad
I
if I
can
could be of
tell
any help.
students over here, having been an entrepreneur myself many times around, 1 in 10 ventures succeed. So I can see some 50, 60 students who've said me. So there might be 5 to 10 great startups sitting in this room right now, Shariq, inspired by you.
But anyway, I can help. I'd be happy to. That's phenomenal energy. I don't think in my time when I did my MBA, if you had asked this question, I don't think this proportion of class would have said me. So I think it also speaks a lot about the youth of today, right? And the spirit of entrepreneurship that's going up in the country. It's really commendable.
We've done a lot
कोचिंग
of
बंद कर
serious
जल्दी
work, and
से
I'm going
गेट
to.
बंद कर
Yeah, guys, can you please put yourself on mute, please? So we've done lots of serious talk. You've spoken about business, etc. Tell us some war stories. There must be some amazing stories you've had as you built TGL. I'm sure there's a lot of fun stuff. I remember as we were building Shoolini, there's a lot of stuff that we laugh about. But we'd love to hear about, some of those funny instances that kept your momentum on, and also some tough times. We'd love to hear a few of those stories.
Sure, I would be happy to. And there's a lot of them, but I think the most recent one and the most relevant that comes to mind right now, right, is this pandemic. How do you quickly evolve? How do you adjust? How do you transform your business for unforeseen challenges? None of us saw the coronavirus challenge come up. Uh, and I mean, in the journey of TGL, there have been many challenges, right? Because we source from around the world, and shipping gets affected time to time. The import duties change, and all of that happens. But that's sort of something that's just part of business. This pandemic, though, is something that's not. As a company, I can tell you in January, about 55% of our revenue came from offline channels, which include our own retail store at the international airport, our stores in various retail outlets such as Nature's Basket, such as Modern Bazaar, Heiko, Food Hall, all these guys, and of course the hotels, restaurants, and cafes, right? So 55% of the company's entire revenue in January comfortably coming from offline. And suddenly in March, out of the blue, this pandemic hits. In April, our revenue from all of these channels was zero, zero. Airports were shut down, so no revenue from airports. Hotels, restaurants, cafes shut down. Most retail outlets were shut down except for a little bit of phone deliveries and whatever Dunzo, Zomato you could get from these stores. And that's a big hit to take. Our warehouse was also challenged, was shut down. So at a stage like this, what do you do? How do you respond? And that's where the team sort of came together, right? And as the people who are leading the company, Bhuman and I, we had to be proactive every day. We had to get on Zoom calls with the entire team every day. Uh, we had to, I mean, we pushed and pushed and pushed, and we got the commissioner to sign off on allowing our warehouse to open under strict sanitization measures. We deployed PPE kits. It's not when you're building a company, you don't have the luxury of saying, okay, let's see what happens next. You don't, you can't. Every single day that you're not doing your best means that you are that close to being the 9 startups that fail instead of the one that succeeds. It's a constant push. You just have to keep pushing. So our warehouse was shut for less than 2 weeks, whereas a lot of players were shut for 2 months. And that's only because we pushed as hard as we could to get permissions in place, to get full PPE kits, sanitization measures. We built a chamber with that sprays. And it was all expensive, but that's a call you make, right? Because we decided upfront that the virus isn't going anywhere anytime soon. That's the worst case scenario. Let's work on the worst case scenario. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We immediately started listing with every online player. Before the pandemic, we were selling only on Amazon and on, I think, Flipkart and Snapdeal, 3 main channels of sale and our website. Today, we are there with 23 online players. I didn't even know that there were 23 players, but today we are with 23 players. And the only reason that happened in 6 months is because, we went all guns blazing, all out, pushing very hard. So players like Qtrove, players like Urban Platter, you name it, no matter how big or small, we had to shift our entire company strategy towards all of that. We took all our ad spends from offline and started pumping it in online sales on social media. And our numbers now are higher than they were in January, even though 50% of our channel of sales is still not working. So I think that has been one of more recent key challenge that we overcame. And the only reason it happened was because not just us, right? Everyone in the company, everyone who works in the startup has the same sort of ethos, which is get work done. You just push, break walls down, no matter how you have to, with one motto in mind: get work done. That's sort of how you get through challenges. Um, I hope that sort of helped in any way.
Yes.
Lovely thoughts and the perspectives, Shariq. Thank you so much. I'd really like the students to participate. If you've got any questions, students, why don't you put it on chat? I think we'd love to answer those. So we've got Mahesh is possibly asking a question. He says that at some stage when time and strategy is not calculated or expected at that point of time, some people decide to give up. And he's asking if you've faced such a phase, and how do you motivate yourself if you're going through such tough times? How do you motivate yourself to work long and hard? And how do you overcome failure, Shariq?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very important question from an entrepreneurship angle. And like I said, there have been many failures, right? So TGL is actually not my first startup. There have been quite a few, and some actually did well, and we sold them. Some didn't do well, and we shut them down. There was one called the Future Wear, which I started right off the bat, and that we had a concept. The concept was customizable T-shirts and uh, how to describe this? LED. The technology is called EPT, electrophoton tech. It's like an LED panel on your T-shirt. It's a square panel that goes. It has 2 batteries. It responds to sound, and like animations happen on your T-shirt basis sound. It's actually pretty cool. Some of you might have seen this. So the concept was to launch this and focus on events like Sunburn in Goa, focus on the clubbing partying scenes in Bombay. So this was the EPT tech. And then we imported a machine from the US that could customize designs for you on the website. You could hit print and you would get a single customized t-shirt for yourself. There's no MOQ of 5 or 10, which normal players were doing. So that's sort of how we were charting our path into the blue ocean instead of jumping in the red ocean, which is having MOQs. So you could go on our website, you could design your own t-shirt, and entire software was there. You hit print, and the t-shirt would be printed fresh and shipped to you. And within 3 days, you would have a brand new t-shirt printed with whatever concept you have in your mind. And we were very keen and very excited about the idea, and we got some money for it as well from angels, but it just didn't click at all because I don't know, the market wasn't ready for it. The pricing wasn't ready for it. The pricing was actually on the higher side, and that's something we learned from there, that we have to price very competitively. And that after a year and a half of bleeding cash on that, that's a decision we took, that we can't reduce the price because the machine that we got from the US costs that much. The ink of it costs, because we have to keep importing the ink from the US again and again and again for it. No local manufacturer was willing to manufacture that ink just for one player. So being in a blue ocean did not work well for us. Being in a red ocean might have been better for us in that case. And we took a call and we said, okay, let's cut our losses. Let's shut the company down. Let's move on. Instead of struggling repeatedly with a failure, you need to decide when to pull the plug, and that's as important a decision as any. And like I said, that's what I did with philosophy. That's what we did with this company. It was called the Future Wear. I think the website is still up. But it's a tough call, but you need to know when to cut your losses and move on instead of being stuck in something that might never work out.
Bunch of very, very interesting comments. I think the first one which you should know is Shivam says, green tea is not on your site is out of stock. So you might want to note that, Shariq. So good observation.
Yes. Thank you
Shivam,
for that.
I'm sure Shariq would love to know that. There must be reasons on supply chain on that.
Well, Diwali actually is the reason. Diwali, we were expecting this year Diwali to have been very low in gifting because of the whole pandemic, but we've been taken aback. Diwali gifting has been through the roof. We weren't prepared for it and just completely sold out. My apologies.
Tell me one thing, Shariq. I haven't tried your site, but if I want to give gifts to, let's say, 100 of my students, right? Your tea, can I just put in their addresses and give a bulk order from your site? Is that something that you do?
We do, but we encourage for bulk orders to contact us directly because, again, for bulk orders, the pricing changes. There's a much lower pricing, and then that's handled by we have a special team for bulk orders.
I'm sure you're talking about Diwali gifts. Anyway, Bharti is saying, how can we help a country by being an entrepreneur? Is that something that comes to your mind, helping the country, or it's that's something you'll worry about later?
No, definitely, it comes to mind, and it's something you can help with. So I don't necessarily think you have to be an entrepreneur to help your country, right? I mean, there are many ways you can help your country, even if you're doing a job. But it is true that being an entrepreneur gives you a greater leeway, a more flexibility in being able to do this. There are many ways of looking at it. The most straightforward is you create more jobs as an entrepreneur than you would if you were just taking up a job yourself. And that helps people, that helps the country, that helps the economy. CSR, corporate social responsibility, is something that helps. It's a two-pronged sword because it helps you as a company as well, having a CSR angle. And we have done a lot of CSR activities in the past, and we still do it. For example, we support women in sports. Women in sports is the Butterfly Squad. I think it'll be there on our website. Is one of the teams in women's soccer that we supported. So these were players from not the most privileged sections of the economy, but who wanted to create something in sports. And as you know, apart from cricket, very few other sports in India pay well to people who want to get in this field. So we were the key marquee sponsors for this soccer team, the Butterfly Squad, and we helped them train. We gave them kits. We did a lot of various activities with them, and formed a league. And it helped get a lot of women from various parts of the country come together and improve their game and become more professionally trained. So that was one of the very best.
And I'm sorry for this. You've got so many questions, and I want to cover as many as possible. And I know we are just 4 to 5 minutes left for the talk.
Sure.
Let me just ask one question that Sonal is asking.
Okay, Sonal's question.
Sonal is there. So she says, focus on more margins and lesser quantity, or lesser margins and more numbers?
Excellent question. Entirely driven from your core brand value and your core product value proposition, right? If you're going to offer a Rolls Royce, you need to make sure you have the margins to cover the fact that you're going to sell very few products. But then at the same time, you need to make sure your product quality is so through the roof that people are willing to pay that premium. But on the other hand, if you're going to be offering, I don't know, Maruti 800, then work on wafer thin margins. but you're going to make for it through the products that you offer. So it all derives from your brand proposition, from who you are and what you want to be. Essentially, look at it: a Rolls Royce and a Maruti 800. What do? They all have four wheels. They have two wipers, the same number of doors. They get you from point A to point B, and they both have radio systems, right? So the core functional offering is the same. You're not differentiating on functional offering. You're entirely differentiating on your brand proposition, on your quality offering. You're doing the same thing. One is just doing it in a better way, and that's where the entire offering drives from, right? So these tiny nuances in your brand define all of this, and so that's why getting your core brand right is key, and that derives from who you are and why you have a leverage in being able to do one thing over the other. If your leverage is you have the most focus on quality and you have the best insight into doing something, then maybe look at a premium offering. If your leverage is you can get a mass production, you are great at supply chain, you can tie all of these things together, then maybe look at mass offering instead.
So really, I think what Shariq is saying is get a strategy right, and your strategy will drive whether you would be a niche player or a mass player, and your pricing will be driven by what sort of a brand you want to be. You can't be a mass player and say that you won't scale up, and you can't be a niche player and say that you'll go out and have millions of consumers, unless you are Steve Jobs, of course.
Unless you
Create a premium brand and then also make it mass, but that's a different story. I think there are very few Steve Jobs around in this world. Kumar has a very interesting question. He's asking you, who was your supporter in tough times? And we'll give very 30-second answers now, Shariq.
Okay, my wife. Definitely my wife. You need your family to support you. Yeah.
So there's always a woman behind a successful man, and there's a man behind a successful woman. Ask Poonam; she'll tell you that. I could see Arvind standing behind Poonam sometime back, right? Arvind, you want to show your face again?
We've just changed places. I came to his laptop because the phone was not that great.
Wonderful, wonderful. And who was your mentor? Ashwarya is asking. And do you have a mentor? Do you have a bunch of mentors?
Bunch of mentors, actually, mentors from across the industry. It's always good to reach out. Just reach out to as many people as you can, and you'll be surprised how many of them are willing to help you out.
So Mahesh has posted this a couple of times, so we'll pick it up. He's saying, how do you work with feedback and how do you fix errors?
Proactively. Feedback is the most important thing you can do. It is the cheapest way for you to learn from your mistakes, right? We get feedback on our emails all the time. We have a dedicated person for collating feedback. We do something called NPS, Net Promoter Score. Read about it. There's a very effective methodology for incorporating feedback and helping turn your company around. NPS, Net Promoter Score.
So Saqib Khan is asking, clearly your strategy might be different post-COVID. How much have you changed post-COVID? Is it a 180-degree turn or it's just a minute change?
It's a huge change, not 180, but yeah, 90. Like I said, we completely shifted our focus on online. And that means the team strength, the company strength, the distribution, the production, everything has changed to accommodate a shift towards online. 45% of our revenue is now 95% of our revenue.
So Ankita is asking, she's saying, I've got lots of ideas, but I always get stuck. And she's saying, is it necessary to be a problem solver first or be a risk taker first?
I think they go hand in hand. You need to solve the problems, right? And to jump into entrepreneurship, unless you're a risk taker, I can't see that being happening. If you don't have a problem to solve, you don't have a product to sell. And if you're not going to take the risk, then you're not going to jump in. So both, definitely both.
I agree with it, but I would still say, focus more on risk taking. There are lots and lots of people who keep debating their idea, especially consultants, right? I mean, at BCG, I'm sure after your success, lots and lots of people are talking about becoming entrepreneurs, but very few do, because they keep talking about problems and they want the best answer, which is not always true. A question that Hillel is asking, and that's great. During your MBA, what was your expectation from the courses? And what's your suggestion to students at this juncture?
So to be honest, my feedback from the MBA was, I think only 50% of what I learned was the knowledge I gained from the books and from the faculty. No offense here to the faculty. The faculty is, of course, very important. but 50% of the learnings comes from interacting with everyone else in the class. And I think it's a greater challenge now doing this online, but it's also a greater opportunity for you to be more familiar with this way of working. So please leverage that. Please network. Very critically important.
So, Shariq, last question from Ankush, and I think it summarizes all the talk. And he's asking, as an entrepreneur, what are 3 points we have to focus on?
Tough one to narrow down to only three, but I would say, first of all, the belief in yourself that you can do it, right? But like you rightly said, you have to be a risk taker. Strategy, idea, all of that is only 10%. Everyone has ideas. You'll be surprised at how many people have ideas. But going beyond just having an idea, taking that risk, jumping into it and doing it, that is critically important. One. Two, having a right partner. A lot of people do it solo, and hats off to them. But from what I've seen, having someone else who can complement your strengths and make up for your weaknesses creates a more holistic offering. So if you can find someone who can do it with you, I just believe that improves your chances of success. And three, just knowing what market testing, validation. Yeah, you could believe your idea is the best, but be open to feedback. Talk to people, and like I said, people respond very nicely. Talk to industry stalwarts. They'll take time out for you. Don't be scared. Be on LinkedIn. Be very proactive on LinkedIn. Reach out to people. Gather that feedback in.
So true, Shariq. That's what we were talking yesterday. Ask questions. Don't be afraid. And I'll just add one last thing over here, which I'm sure Shariq would agree with completely. Pursue something that you're passionate about, not because you want to make money, but because you think you can solve something. So, very famous quote by Jeff Bezos. He says that in this world of competition today, there are mercenaries and missionaries. Mercenaries who work for money, and missionaries who work for a mission.
Mm.
And he says that the unfortunate part is that ultimately it's the missionaries who also end up making the money. So work for a mission, work for something that gives you passion, and you'll make the money, you'll do something exciting. And life is anyway not about only money. You need to do well in life, but it doesn't make a difference whether you have $100 million or $5 million, but probably you do need a few $1,000s in your pocket. So do well, students. This was absolutely fantastic. I'm going to request Shariq to give one last parting thought, and then we'll hand it over to Poonam. Shariq, your last one sentence parting thought.
Well, I'll just quote Henry Ford, if I may then. He said, and rightfully, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So believe in yourself, think you can, and you will.
Fantastic. I get goose pimples as you come to a close. We can, and I always end up anything I write with a hashtag because we can. Because we can, all of you can become unicorn promoters. May all of you become unicorn promoters if that's what you want to do. I'm going to hand it over to Poonam and thank Shariq for this wonderful talk. I'm going to take a number also, Shariq, from Poonam, if you allow, and would love to be in touch. Poonam,
thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, I just need to thank Shariq. You missed all the compliments that came your way in the chat. Students said this was one of the most amazing talks that they've heard. And I need to thank my daughter-in-law, who was just talking about you, and I picked it up and I said, wow, this sounds like a real exciting story. Let me invite Shariq. And you accepted our invitation. So that was really amazing. Arvind, my husband, and I were just talking about it. And, you said all the right things that students need to.
I think we're losing Poonam. So I think Poonam is saying,
so thank you
Poonam, we're losing
again,
you.
and somebody is saying amazing session. So thank you.
I think Poonam's network is not very good. So Poonam is, of course, saying thank you to you, Shariq. Amazing session, honestly, and we'd love to get you back again. So once again, thank you on behalf of students, faculty, and the management of Shoolini. We promise you at Shoolini that we will go ahead and implement all that we learned from you today.
Well, once again, thank you so much for having me. It was an honor. And thank you to all the students. I think every time we get to share our experience, these questions that you guys raise really helps us think about things in a different light. And that's as valuable for me as anything else. So thank you. Thank you for this.
So Poonam, over to you.
Well, can I be heard now? Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So just
Shall
that
I
time
log off?
also I was just thanking you, Shariq. Thank you so much. And Sonal is saying, yes, we can hear you. Well, mothers-in-law should always be heard and seen. So thank you. That was really amazing. And we hope to have you back soon. Thanks, Atan.
It was my pleasure. Cheers. Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
cheers. Take care. You too. Stay safe. Bye-bye. Okay, guys. So I think everybody really enjoyed that talk, and I was also, glued onto it, and I heard every single word that Shariq said. Very wonderful words, very wonderful ideas that he shared, and it all made so much sense because he's experienced every bit of it, and he's not just talking from some book. So that was amazing, and we now take a break and come back at 2 o'clock for the next session. So thank you everyone for being here, and thank you Kamal if you're there.
No,
And
Kamal sir is
we
not
see
here.
everybody. Kamal is not here.
नहीं
Okay.
है, नहीं.
And we meet at 2 o'clock.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Bye
Okay.
everybody.
Bye, ma'am.
Please be here on time. Pradeep sir also emphasized on